I both love and hate the book of Job. It is a wonderful piece of poetry. It is amazing to read. There's 36 chapters of it's neat to read. But at the same time, there's a lot about the book of Job I really don't like. I mean, for one, Job spends most of the book asking, why did all this happen to me? And God's answer is a very unsatisfying, well, did you create the universe? And you're kind of left going, that doesn't actually help very much, but thanks, I guess. Then, of course, you've got Job's 3 friends who try very hard to convince Job that there is some sin that he's not confessing, and that's why all these terrible things are happening to him. Now, I personally think this is an excellent way to comfort a friend who has just lost everything. Tell them what they did wrong. Right? I mean, I don't know why that was the immediate thing that they go to, but so Job has to put up with all their nonsense for 36 chapters about how much he did wrong and isn't admitting. But the most worrying part of the book of Job for me is its very premise. Because everything that happens to Job is because of a bet between God and Satan. And that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't like it at all. And I'm in good company in not liking it. Because as I was getting ready for this sermon, I checked a whole bunch of commentaries. Because commentaries are a good way for me to go, I don't know what's going on here. Let me go to a head that's smarter than mine. So you go to the head that's smarter than yours, and what do they do when they come to this bit of the book of Job? They ignore it. Almost every commentator I read completely ignores all of the stuff about God and Satan. At best, you get kind of it's just poetry, don't worry about it. But the closest someone got was they said, God hardly emerges from all of this any better than Satan. He rises to his challenge like a fish to bait and almost lays a bet on Job's virtue. And that's the closest anyone got, because right after that, he immediately forgot that he said that and went on talking about the book of Job. But the whole scene is just awkward. So I'm going to do what the smarter heads than mine did when they get to it. I'm going to ignore it because I don't like it. It's probably not the best way to go about things, and you could probably write a doctoral dissertation about just that event in the book of Job. So I'm going to say that it happened, but I'm not going to make any grand points about it. So this whole book of Job starts out because Job is a righteous man. It's a great way to start a book. Job was a righteous man. He was also a rich man because he had 7,000 camels, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 ox, and 500 donkeys. Donkeys. Yeah, donkeys. Oxen, donkeys. He also had a whole bunch of servants, and just to top it off, he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. So he's doing rather well for himself. So the way that this conversation that I really don't like goes is, hey, Satan, how you doing today? Oh, been all right, just kind of going through around the whole world and seeing what's up. What do you think about that Job guy over there? Oh, well, he's got a lot of nice stuff. I bet if you took that stuff away, he wouldn't like you so much. Okay. Do you see why this makes me really uncomfortable? So God puts Job in Satan's hands, and on the same day, all of this stuff happens to Job. A messenger comes up to him and says, hey, so those camels, the Sabaeans took them. And then while that messenger's saying something, another messenger comes up and says, oh, your sheep, lightning strike wildfire. Then another messenger comes up. Your oxen and your donkeys, the Chaldeans took them. So Job just lost most, if not all, of his material wealth. And then just to top it off, another messenger comes up and says, there was a tornado, it hit the house that all of your children were having a party in, and they're all gone too. Job lost everything in the span of that conversation. But Job says, well, I was naked when I was born, and guess that's how it is. May the name of the Lord be praised. I don't think I could do that. I think I would do the very thing that Satan says that Job will probably do in this situation, namely to curse God. That would probably be my first reaction, if we're being completely honest. But Job instead just, I was naked from my mother's womb. I'll leave the world naked. May the name of the Lord be praised. Then, of course, the bet continues because Satan shows up at God's door again. God says, hey, Job still hasn't sinned by cursing me even after we took his stuff away. Satan says, well, you took his stuff away, but you didn't actually do anything to him. I bet if you did something to him, then he'd curse your name. And then God said, okay. So Job is afflicted with all kinds of horrible diseases. He, so much so that his wife says to him, curse God and die. Because Job is suffering that much, the wife's immediate reaction is, just die, you'll be better off that way. But Job, we read, in all of this, Job did not sin in what he said. And then, of course, that's the point in which Job sits and mourns for a good long time. His friends show up. There's 36 or 38 chapters worth of discussion. God shows up, and Job eventually gets all of his stuff back double, and he gets 10 more kids. But that's at the end of the book. We won't be there for a while. Now, that's all really rough, but it's about a guy named Job that's in the Bible. It's really far away. It doesn't feel very close to us, right? I mean, we can read it and go, wow, that really stinks for Job, but it's just book learning. It's not the same. So let me tell you about another gentleman, a man named Horatio Spafford. Now, Mr. Spafford was born in Troy, New York, but he lived in Chicago. He was a very successful lawyer and a very successful real estate investor in Chicago. Now, in 1871, something rather significant happened in Chicago. There's actually a soccer team named after that event because, of course, Chicago would name their professional soccer team about the Great Chicago Fire. And in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, Spafford lost most of his real estate investments. That same year, his 4-year-old son died of scarlet fever. 2 years after that, in 1873, he and his family decided that they were going to go to England to visit his friend D.L. Moody, who was preaching in London. D.L. Moody is kind of a big deal in the 19th century Christian preacher kinds of circles. So they were going to go to England. Horatio was delayed on some business, so his wife and 4 daughters all went on a ship to England. And everything was going okay until a steamship crashed into their ship, and the ship sunk. And Horatio gets a telegram when his wife returns to London, saved alone. What do I do? And so Horatio immediately gets on a ship and heads to London to meet his wife, who is now without their 4 daughters who were lost at sea. And as Horatio is on his ship, he passes the point where his 4 daughters died in the shipwreck. And he writes these words: "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Horatio's response to this tragedy is like the response of Job, to praise God. In this moment of extreme tragedy, he still praises God. And he takes comfort in the faith that he has. Now, the Spaffords, eventually, they get back to Chicago. They have 3 more children, only to lose another son to scarlet fever. But just to make the comparison to Job a little bit more accurate, the church that they were attending in Chicago decided that they must have done some grievous sin to suffer all of these tragedies. And so the Spaffords, not wanting to be around a whole bunch of people that tell them that they must have sinned somehow and that's why they're suffering, they decide to start their own group. And the group that they started ends up going to Jerusalem, where they set up shop. They're called the American Colony. And all they do is help people. Doesn't matter if the people they're helping are Christian or Jewish or Muslim. They just help people. And they develop a very interesting reputation in Jerusalem, one that actually ends up serving them quite well. Because unlike most other Christian groups that were in Jerusalem at the time, they never actively tried to convert anyone. They just went to help. If someone happened to come to know Jesus through that, that was great, but they weren't going to actively convert anyone, which of course made the Jews and the Muslims around them respect them quite a bit more. So much that when World War I rolled around, and this group that was still called the American Colony, even though the Ottomans and the US were on different sides of that war, the American colony still stuck around and still helped people, and the Ottoman Turks thought that it was great. The story of Horatio Spafford is a remarkable story of faith in the face of extreme tragedy. That even when everything fell apart around him, he could still look to God for strength. He could still look to God and say the words, whatever my lot, it is well with my soul. I don't know if I could have the same strength that the Spaffords and that Job did. I hope that I could, but I don't know if I can. The only thing I can do is trust that if God can get them through these tragedies, when something like that happens to me, I can trust that God can get me through too. Because through the strength that we receive from God, they took all the events of their life and they kept on serving. They kept on loving God. They kept on loving their neighbor because of that faith that upheld them. And following their examples, we can say the same to God, that whatever happens to us, it is well with my soul.